Today we're talking about upholstery and getting started upholstering with leather with Rhonda from the Whimsical Chair, who is not only an expert in the trade, but her craftsmanship upholstering with leather speaks for itself. We'll discuss everything there is to know about getting started in upholstery and upholstering with leather, along with her workshops and how she runs her business. So let's get started.
Well, let me introduce you real quick, Rhonda. So, Rhonda is from the Whimsical Chair, and you're just a force to be reckoned with in the upholstery world. I feel so honored to have you here with me today. You have outstanding
Oh.
upholstery skills, and your expertise when it comes to working with leather is just, oh my gosh. Every time I see one of your pieces, I'm like, it's absolutely timeless. So you are an upholstery instructor. You've been an instructor at Workroom Conference, and you have a bunch of stuff coming up. So we'll talk about that too. And then yeah, we'll go through it, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to have you here today. But can you tell us about your journey into the upholstery world? Like what inspired you to pursue the trade, how you got to where you're at today, like the whole bit.
Yes, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much. I mean, I have an equal admiration for what you do. I've been following you for a long time. I love supporting everyone in the upholstery industry, especially women. I think that we're better together. And so I love everything that you're doing and all the stuff you have going. I am in Castle Rock, Colorado. I grew up on a farm in Iowa, so not rodeoing or ranching, but I did grow up on a farm. I was in 4-H. I started sewing when I was 5. My grandmother had us. I have 2 sisters, and she had us at sewing machines when we were little bitty girls. So I've been sewing and working with fabric my whole life. Um, I moved to Kansas when I was 20. I met my husband there, and we have 3 children, now adults, but I was a stay-at-home mom. So I was in Wichita, and there was, through our extension office, because my kids were in 4-H, there was an upholstery class. And my kids at that point were all school age. And so I had some free time. So I thought, well, that sounds like fun. I've always loved working with fabrics. I worked in retail before I had my kids. So, I mean, I've always had my hands in textiles and fabrics. So I started taking classes through the extension office and just thought, well, I'll just do some things for myself, right? I had dining room seats I wanted to do. The first project that I took, because the instructor didn't really give us any guidance. So I took a wingback chair, which I don't
Oh,
advise that as your very first project, but I didn't know, right? So, and I muddled through it. And actually, yeah, I mean, I wish someone would have said, that's not the best piece to start on. That's the advice that I give to students, right? Start with something. I don't want you to leave the workshop or do your first piece and say, well, I'm never doing that again.
right. This
Yeah. So I just, like I said, I was just doing things for myself, for our home. And what happens when you start talking about, well, I'm taking an upholstery class, or I'm, working on this. Everybody has a piece that they want reupholstered, and so it just like, and I think that we're kind of unicorns, right? I mean, people are like, oh, I didn't even know there were people that still did that. So I was doing, when we were in Kansas, I was doing just starting to do things, for friends and family and like my kids' school, and not really taking much money for any of it because, I was learning. I didn't have the confidence that I was going to charge really anything for it. And then in 2012, we moved to Colorado. My husband's job brought us here. And I just kind of kept, going with doing things for our home here, and was kind of isolated because all my friends were in Kansas, and I didn't have my class anymore. And started searching on YouTube for just instruction, to see what I could find. And Kim Shagnun's group, Kim's Upholstery, at that point, she didn't even have her membership up and going, but I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. There were no classes in Denver that I found when I first got here. So I started just searching for things online. And I joined her membership as soon as she, opened it up. And then everything just kind of grew from there. So that was 2012 when we moved here. 2014 is when I opened my business officially, registered with the state of Colorado, got my domain, the Whimsical Chair. I had the website, but it took me 2 years to build it because I knew how to upholster, but I didn't know really how to do the business side of things.
Right. Yeah. I totally understand that.
Yeah.
Like,
And
yeah.
I'm like, if I could just sit in my basement and do upholstery, but you can't because nobody knows where you are or how to find you.
Yeah. Like you
So,
can't have one without the other. It's like
yeah.
this double-edged sword. Like,
Yeah.
I totally get it. Like if I could just hide in my studio and just
Yeah. Yeah. But that's how, I mean, and and I think it's hard to put yourself out there.
it
It's
is.
it's hard to say like, okay, I'm gonna, put my work on social media because we all know there's always gonna be every once in a while someone that's gonna have a snarky comment. And I just have gotten good at block and delete. I'm like, if I don't, I mean, I would never go on and do that to someone else.
No.
And if you do it to me, I'm like, that's fine, whatever. I'll just block and delete. And I feel like I have enough support. I'm sure you feel the same, Sierra, right? Like,
Yeah.
I,
Like it's just at first you're like, oh, I want everybody to like my stuff, and your feelings are all hurt. They're like, oh, your lines are off here or whatnot. And then later on, you're like, just go. Like
but
you're
just go
not
away.
my goal. Yeah, just get out of here. Yeah, your skin gets a lot thicker.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah,
Yeah, so 2014 is when I started. So this year is 10 years in business, which feels crazy. I mean, sometimes it feels like it's been forever, and other times it feels like I just started. So,
that's awesome. Yeah. Oh my gosh, your pieces. We're gonna have to share some of your pieces and stuff. Well, at the end, I'll have you tell where everybody can find you. So, uh, let's see. We talked a little bit about your pieces, and we'll get into that a little bit more. So, in your opinion, somebody who wants to get into upholstery and get into the trade, what would you recommend to them as far as how to do it, how to get into it, how to get started? Like this, it's like this vast world, and there's so many different options. What would you recommend, especially with your students, because you do a lot of instructing? What do you tell them? Like, how do they get going?
um, I would say some of the best things, and I'm very open with it's like I mean, I always tell people like, you ask me and I'll tell you what I price things, I'll tell you where, I do custom work. So all of the work that I do is for clients that have pieces. They come to me. I set up a leather or fabric consultation and I'm doing the work for them and they're taking I don't do any pieces that I'm selling like through Etsy and I'm not shipping anything. So but I mean I know you're doing that. I have lots of friends that are doing that. So I think you kind of have to look at like what do I want my business to look like? And I think that's hard in the beginning, because in the beginning I also thought like, well, I'll just do fun chairs like Wendy Conklin, right? Chair Whimsy, like I love her stuff. Um,
Yeah.
and then shipping like was like a felt like a huge barrier for me. I know now after talking to people it's not, but so everything that I do is custom client work. And I am lucky to live in an area where I have a lot of people that, are looking for that. So some of the things that I did, I started out, I mean, let me back up just a little bit. I would say start with small pieces and work your way up. Because I think the biggest thing that will freeze people and make them like, okay, I can't do this, is to take on something that feels like I have no idea what I'm doing, and you can just kind of get like paralyzed in the fear of making mistakes or not knowing. So I always suggest to students, like, start small and work your way up. And if something in the beginning, if I had someone reach out and wanted me to do something and I didn't feel like I could do it, I said that. Like, that's out of my skill set. I'm still learning. And I think it's okay to be honest like that, you know? It's like maybe down the line I could do that for you, but right now I'm still learning and I'm not comfortable taking that.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so social media, I mean, it feels like it's the devil sometimes, right? But social media is how I started. So I
Okay.
had my Facebook page and then Instagram. Um, and I had my domain, and then I finally got my website up and my Google business. So I would say for me, what really catapulted my business was setting up Google business. So people, if they're in my area, they're searching upholstery near me and my business pops up, and having my website where, and it was fairly simple in the beginning, but a landing page where people could go, they could see my portfolio, they could find my email, and a way for them to contact me.
That's awesome.
Social media is great, but you can't search for upholstery in Castle Rock on Facebook.
Right. Yeah.
So, I think it kind of depends on which direction you want to go. Um, I can't really speak to Etsy or listing things on Etsy because I don't do that. I would say that Facebook Marketplace is a little hard because people don't really want to pay what you have invested in those pieces. Um, a lot of people will find a small like shop. There's a place here in town that has booths where like you could do pieces and have them, displayed. I have friends that do that. So, I mean, there's lots of different avenues. I think it's hard in the beginning to figure out like what do you want to do, while especially while you're still learning, but there's lots of different ways that you can go with your business.
Oh yeah. I feel like the options are just endless. Like, well, and now you do drapery also, right? And then you
I'm
have your pillows.
Yeah, I'm just starting drapery. I mean, that's a whole new the project that I'm working on is actually for me, which is how I usually do things if I'm going to do something new. But yeah, Roman shades, balances, cornice boards. I'm kind of starting with that. I
Right.
have a good friend that's really close to me that has a drapery workroom, so she's, a huge support. And I also think that that's huge if you can build a local community on top of building, a community like, worldwide. I think all of that is good.
I agree. Those connections. I mean, it's crazy how social media, like, it creates connections, but then at the same time, we're so far away. So it's like this, it is still a double-edged sword. But I completely agree with what you're saying as far as like getting started and starting with those projects that give you confidence. Because, like you were saying, if you start with something like a wingback chair and it just kicks you until you're down and you're like, I'm out. This is
Yeah,
not this
yeah,
isn't
it's
going
true.
to work for me. Yeah. So now, as far as um, common misconceptions about upholstery, and I feel like this is a topic that comes up quite a bit, like pricing or quality or fabric quality. I mean, there's so many things on that level. What is there something as far as misconceptions goes that you deal with in your business and for what you do, since you do mostly commission pieces? Is there a question that you have to answer a lot, or a myth you have to debunk about upholstery with people who are asking you to work on their pieces?
I think pricing is always a topic that is it's always up there as far as like something in my opinion that we should be talking more about. Um I am all about trying to lift everyone up and charge more because what we do is a lot of work. One of the reasons that I really started social media and sharing pictures of the process was so people could see how much work we were doing.
Yeah.
And I mean, for the most part, you know, if it's a newer piece, it may not get torn all the way down to the frame, but I think that's important, you know, to show that I'm not just covering over all the old stuff because we know how gross it is. So,
Yes.
like, you don't wanna just cover over it, and a lot of times, I mean, you have to tear it all apart to know, is the spring system good? Is the webbing good? Like, you have to get all the way down to it, and so that's why I show all of those pictures for, I think just the general public to understand, but also for my clients.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so I am at a wonderful stage in my business where I have lots of repeat clients and clients that are giving my name to their friends, and it's a great place to be. I'm very thankful for it. Um, but in the beginning when I was, you know, I had a cognito form, which I still have it. It's just shut down right now because I'm booked out through the fall of this year. But the cognito form was a form that people could go on and submit their, you know, their pictures of their piece, details about their piece, and it gave me a landing page where I could keep track of all of that coming in. And, you know, it was like someone would message me on Facebook Marketplace, or they would send an Instagram message, or they would text me, or they would email me, and I was losing track of how things were coming in. So I have this cognito form, and I started with the free version. You have to have a website in order to use this form. There has to be a place for it to go. But I just got to a point where I was like, if you want an estimate from me, you have to submit your information through the cognito form because it was helping me keep track of all of it. The benefit to that also several years ago, I mean, I'm sure it felt this way for you in COVID, when we thought everything was going to come to a screeching halt, it did
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
right?
Really. I
Like,
don't know.
what?
Yeah. Like,
So, I was getting probably, you know, 30 to 35 inquiries a month.
oh
I
my God.
mean, I can't do 30 pieces a month.
Yeah.
And, and then you have to send estimates,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like, and so, and I have on there like 3-day turnaround for an estimate. It just gave me time to kind of gather my facts and stuff. Um, and I could see how many, you know, if I had 30 people with an inquiry, and I could go back and track how many of those turned into actual work for me.
Oh, very cool.
And my husband's a banker, so he's always about the numbers,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And he's like, if 50% of that, you know, people are saying yes, raise your prices.
Yeah. That's what we just talked about the other day, like 50%. And then some people are taking 90%
Um,
of their quotes or something out. I'm like, that's
you're not
insane. You're
charging.
gonna like,
You're not charging.
yeah.
And don't we all want to work less and make more?
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, so that form helped me to see those numbers,
That's
right?
amazing.
And then you can figure out like, okay, where is my number? Do I want it to be at 20%? Do I want 20% of them to, you know, turning into actual work?
Right.
Again, that's for custom work, right? So it's a little different than if you're making and selling pieces. But I just like played with those numbers until I got it to where I was like, okay, and what happens, and this is crazy, but we do know this, sometimes the more you charge, the more people want you.
I know it's crazy. Or there's a piece you don't want to work on, so you'll quote it really high, and then they're like, "Oh, that sounds great." I'm like, "Oh."
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, and I think, you know, I'm always evaluating. I mean, I kind of evaluate my business like every 6 months just to see like, is it going in the direction I want it to be going? What am I enjoying or not enjoying? You know, it's like, and then it's like, okay, then maybe I let this go. I have a new grandbaby that I am fortunate to get to watch 2 days a week. And he's 8 months old. So last summer, I was like, I'm not willing to not have that time with him. And if people are in a hurry, I'm probably not their girl. And I don't know, it just feels like for my journey, it just has turned into this. I love my clients. I don't have nasty clients. Most of them I'm friends with after I get done working for them. Most of them come back, with additional pieces. So I am very blessed to have my business be where it is. But I hustled. I mean, I hustled to get here.
You did all that work to set it up so it led into where you're at. And you can really see in your business and how you talk to people online that you do love them and that you have amazing clients. And I have to say the same thing. Like, you'll hear upholsterers talk about these horror stories. And I like every time I have to knock on wood, so I was like, man, I have the best customers and I have friends with so many people that I've done business with. But I think, and you probably know, like, you almost kind of curate that with what you tolerate, with the pieces you accept, and you can kind of see like if somebody's gonna be trouble right from the get-go. So you can kind of make it to where you have those great customers. I mean, sometimes, there's somebody will slip through the cracks, but for the most part, it's like same deal. Like, I'm so thankful. But with you and your social media, you can really see that, like, how you treat your customers and how you do your business, it feeds into how you run your social media, which I think is something that attracts so many people to you in your business. Like, you're just so genuine and you're so open about what it is you do and the pieces you're working on, and like the struggle in some of the pieces, or like a piece will show up and it's crazy damaged and what you have to do to fix it. And it's just, I love following you. It's so impressive. You have a great, just the overall social media presence. It's so great. I can't talk about it enough. Like,
Thank
I
you.
absolutely love it. So now tell everybody, you work with a lot of leather.
I do.
And I know there's a lot of upholsterers who don't like working with leather, or they won't touch leather, or they're afraid of leather because it's totally different in some aspects compared to fabric. So how do you go about your pieces, designing your pieces with leather? Like, let's say you're switching from fabric to leather. How do you go about that? How do you walk your customer through that to get to these gorgeous pieces you have at the end?
Sure. Yeah, well, that's my leather wall behind me.
So pretty.
So, and clients would reach out. This was probably, I would say, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, was when I started working with leather. So it hasn't really been that long. But clients would reach out like, well, I have this Bergère chair, I want it in leather. And I was like, oh, I don't work with leather. I have this old antique rocking chair, I don't work with leather. And then finally I was like, why don't I work with leather? I mean, you can charge more because the hides are typically more than what your fabric, yardage is. I feel like people expect that it's going to cost more because it is in leather. And so I just finally was like, okay, I'm going to dive into it and just figure it out. There wasn't a whole lot of instruction or people out there that I could ask. Like, I set up an account with Crest Leather. That was my first account. And I contacted them and told them, like, I have this chair and it's again in our home in my husband's office. And I'm like, I need 7 yards of fabric. I knew how much fabric I would need. So how do I know how much leather? And I stupidly thought that they were going to walk me through that. And the wholesalers are just selling hides. I mean, they don't really have all of that information. It's come a long way.
Yeah.
Um, their websites have come a long way. But at that point, I mean, no one, and I was like, well, how do I where do I go to find these
Yeah.
answers?
Yeah.
I
Like,
mean,
what do I do? Yeah.
and so, I finally like one hide typically, I mean, one average size hide is 54 square feet, and that translates to 3 yards, right? So that's roughly, I mean, so and like when I'm doing my leather class for students, this is, and I taught last year at Custom Workroom Conference, I taught the leather up class. So this is some of the information that was in there.
Awesome.
You have to know how much to order. I mean, if you can't get past that, you can't start. So,
No, no.
and leather is not, it's not up the roll or railroaded, right? It's got scars and holes and all of this. And
Yeah.
I think that also sometimes is like this hurdle, like people can't get past. So I mean, I always say, like, especially if you're working for a client, first of all, I suggest starting on leather if you haven't done it. And a lot of your students, I mean, that is what they're doing, but start on a piece for yourself and start on something small.
Yeah.
Leather behaves a lot different than fabric. It has a lot of stretch. You're going to have to like really inspect it because there may be a brand that you don't really see until you look at it right just straight across it, and then you're like, oh, now I can see it. So I always tell, like we lay it right side down so you can inspect the back first. And, I use white chalk and just mark kind of where you're seeing things on the back. And then you can flip it over. And sometimes it doesn't show through to the front, but sometimes it does. But order extra. And even with when I'm doing client pieces, order more leather than you think you're going to need, like at least 20% more.
Yes. Yeah. It's because there's so much waste. Like, I don't think people realize there's so much waste, and their measurements can, and it just, yeah, they can say it's so many square feet, but that is not what you're going to get, or use. So, yeah.
Yeah, no. And you have to, make sure that you're communicating to your client that it will be seamed. It's going to be seamed. I mean, I'm working on a leather sofa right now and it's 80 inches across. Well, you can't get an 80-inch cut with a pull on a hide. So I think just communicating those things, which is also why I think it's good to start small, because then you're going to learn you're going to learn how to work with it. You're going to learn, what it, like how to store it, right? You don't want to fold it because then you're going to have creases in it. And I mean, there's a lot of learning, but I love working with leather. I mean, I love everything about it. So once you can kind of get past that, like, cutting
Yeah.
into the first hide, and then you're like, oh,
Holding
this
your
is
breath.
really fun. Yeah. And then hair on hide is a completely different beast in and of itself because it has no stretch.
Right.
And it's like if you have a piece that has a lot of curves, it's not going to play well with it. So I think like some of those things you just have to learn through trial and error, right? Like, or you might have to make relief cuts like all the way to get it to go where you want it to go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a lot of it is like you were saying, it's learning how to manipulate it and understanding like how it behaves. Because once you understand how leather behaves, it's like, oh, it's not that bad. It's gonna stretch, or it's gonna do this, or once you sew into it or you put a staple in it, that's it. That hole is there. Like you
Yep.
can't go back, you can't take those stitches out. So yeah, it's a different animal, literally, but I love it. I mean, I watch everything you do too, and I mean your pieces are just flawless. So you can really tell that you love working with leather because of the way you're able to manipulate it and make these pieces just they're absolutely gorgeous. My gosh, it's just I'm blown away every single piece you do. So,
Oh.
let's see. Are there working with leather, since we're on the subject, are there any specific tools that you really like when you're working with leather, or techniques that you like to use when you're working with leather, like whether it's sewing on your sewing machine, or like let's say it's just a tight seat or whatnot? Like, is there anything that you always have offhand when you're working with leather?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of the, like your walking foot machine you can use with leather or fabric, right? I think you also have an Amazon storefront. I have an Amazon storefront and I have a leather like kind of little section in there. So I put a lot of stuff in there. There's scissors that you can get at Tandy Leather, but Tandy also has a store on Amazon. I always suggest to my students, if you have a Tandy near you, well, and we talked about this, you said the one close to you wasn't that
Yeah,
great.
it's not very good. I mean, they do have some leather working tools, aside from like tooling and stuff like that. But for us, it's not as good. But there is one that's a few hours away that's a lot better. So I think it might just depend on location and your clientele base, because the one over here, they do more, we'll call it spicy leather working crafts. So it's an interesting store. But then the one that's a few hours away, it's much more like Western base and upholstery base and things like that. So I think
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah. So the leather scissors, I would say I don't use my fabric scissors on leather. Um, that is probably one of the main things. I have the Sailrite staple gun, and it shoots a heavier gauge staple than my other staple guns. Most of them shoot a fine wire staple. I love that gun and those staples when working with leather and vinyl. I don't really work with a lot of vinyl. I don't like vinyl and I love leather. So if anyone comes to me like I want this in vinyl, I'm like, how about leather? Like let's talk about leather. But I love that staple gun because your fine wire staple, I mean, you have to sometimes mess with the pressure on your air compressor because it will shoot through the leather if but the Sailrite gun, it's great for leather. So I mean, I'm trying to think of other things. Venting, which is not really a tool, but that's something to talk to your clients about. Make sure you vent leather because if you have a solid drop-in seat, like a dining seat, and it's a solid board, and you add foam and leather to it, and you don't put any holes in the bottom of it, that air, it's like a whoopee cushion. It just so
Yeah,
you have to vent leather because fabric, the air will flow out of it because it's open, right? Leather, it's going to hold that air in. So I mean, that's like some of those things, talking about how to vent a cushion, this leather sofa that I'm working on. My favorite way to vent is to put like a decking on the bottom. I do leather on the front bottom edge, so it's the wrap is leather, and then add a Velcro right between the leather and where the decking fabric is, and then put decking on the bottom part of the cushion, which makes it, you can't flip it, but
right.
it just it sets so much nicer than if you do a full leather cushion. You can vent it. There's like little brass vents, air vents that you can put in the zipper in the back. I don't feel like it lets enough air out fast enough, but
Right.
it's just like all of those things, to talk to your clients about. And like I said, if it's a solid board, if it's a bench or a seat, you can just drill holes in the bottom of it, and that will let
Yeah,
the air.
yeah, yeah. And then the little vents, I feel like sometimes I have to put so many vents in, to make it compress like it should. So that's the way you do it. I absolutely love it so you put the decking fabric on the bottom of the cushion, and then you put your piece of your Velcro. So then, and that way it stays too. And now,
Yes.
so when you do an attached cushion with leather, have you done that the same way where you do the decking and then the Velcro, or do you do like the attached cushion with your leather? Like how, I think I've seen you do one like that. I think that's what I'm thinking of, like on a
Um,
ottoman or something like that.
I'm trying to think. If you have an attached cushion, you would have leather, on the top, the boxing, and just the wrap, and then the very
Right.
underneath is going to be the decking. I mean, I
So
just think I'm not sure if that's answering your question.
I can't remember if it was a piece you did. I thought it was. and it's exactly what you're talking about, like what you've done with your sofa cushions, where you had the decking underneath the cushion and then you had your Velcro, and maybe it was just something we had talked about. So you don't have to necessarily attach that leather cushion to make it an attached cushion. It's in a sense an attached cushion, but I love how you do that with your decking fabric, and then it lets all the air just escape out, so you don't have to worry about it. You don't have this poof of a whoopee cushion.
Yeah.
And yeah, it looks so good too when you're finished with it. I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful. So
Well, yeah, and it still looks nice underneath because you have your decking, right? Your decking, I'm using the same fabric that I use for my decking is what I'm putting underneath it, underneath the cushion. So, I mean, those, you know what I mean? Like if you flip it up, it's like, okay, it looks very professional. Um, and I mean, I'm bad about if we go to like a hotel or a restaurant. I mean, do you do that where you're like, how did they do that? And all like my husband's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I just want to see, like, how did they, he's like,
I
stop.
just expect it. Yeah. Cody's like, stop it, stop it. You're making a scene. I'm like, I just want to look. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so you give your or clients or your customers different options for leather. Do you, when they come in, when they tell you, okay, I have this piece, I want it redone, reupholstered, do you give them like so many options? Like, here's a few different colored leathers, or here's a few different finishes for leather. Like, if they come to you, and so many times they're like, I have no idea what I want, I just want this redone. What do you tell them to kind of narrow it down, and how do you guide them to that end result? Because sometimes they can take forever designing just because people don't really understand or they don't really have an idea. So is there a process you go through to like walk them down that road to get them to their final selection so you can upholster it?
Yeah. And let me just say too that when I send an estimate to someone, say like um fabric/leather in right in the estimate, right? Because once I started working with leather, and this is also like when students come for the leather workshop, I'm like, now start talking about it.
Yeah.
Because if you go back and you're not talking about it to your clients, they're not going to know that you've just added this new skill to your business. Um, and so I mean, I narrow down before they get here. So once I've sent an estimate to someone and they say, yes, I want to be on your calendar, I don't take deposits up front. I mean, that's not how I want to run my business. If I get to them and I contact them and they say, I've changed my mind, I just
Yeah.
go to the next client. I mean, I'm
I
like,
know about it. Yeah, for
I
me,
tell,
I'm totally the opposite. I'm like, I will not put you on my calendar without a deposit. Nope. Just because people change their minds so much, and I know everybody is different, so I
yeah,
absolutely love it. Because on the same token or the same side, it's like you spend all this time designing their piece sometimes, and then nothing to show for it. So I think it is like you could go one way or the other, because then at the same time, like taking a deposit, sometimes it's like there's that anxiety behind it. Like you have a deposit, so then you have that pressure to get their piece done. Whereas if they're just on the wait list, it's like, okay, well, I'll get to you when I get to you.
right. And so I will say that when I send an estimate, they say, yes, I'm going to be on your calendar. And then I say, when I'm 2 months out, we'll set up a fabric or leather consultation. So really all I have in it, invested in it, is that I've written up that estimate and sent to them.
Oh, that's not bad. Yeah.
Then I reach out to them when I'm 2 months out. I usually have probably, I mean, in a different people work in different ways. I usually probably have 4 to 6 different projects going at a time because I mean, they're in different stages. I work with a master woodworker, so I don't do any of those repairs, the restoration or repairs. I am super blessed to have this amazing woodworker that I've worked with now for probably 8 years, almost the whole time I've been in business. So I'll tear a piece down. He'll take it and do the repairs and restoration. So that's why I have multiple things going, because I may get it torn down and then he may need it for 3 or 4 weeks, right? So, I have other things going, and I try to have like big and small projects going at the same time, because sometimes your hands need a break if you're, tying springs or whatever. You need to just do drop-in seats to kind of give yourself a break. So I set up the consultation, and then before they get here, I've asked them, like, usually send me some pictures of your space. What colors are you thinking? So then I can kind of narrow the search down before they get here.
And then you bring out your tools and all that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. So they come, everything is in my home. I mean, I don't have a storefront. So everything is in my home, in my basement. So clients come to my home. We come downstairs. If they don't, during COVID, it wasn't really running like that, right? I would pull stuff, set it out on my front porch. People would come and take it, look through it, get back to me. But they come, I let people take the samples home. I know some people don't want their books to leave their storefront or their home. I don't have a problem with it, and I've never had anyone keep any of my books. But I let them take them home, and then I usually say within a week, right? I give them a week to like take it home, look at it in your space, because also I think it's impossible to pick out colors in my home. I
Oh
want
yeah.
them to take it to their home and see it in the space, in the lighting, look at it, throughout the day. And we talk about with leather and with fabric. Do you have pets? Do you have small children? With fabric, are you looking for a performance fabric? Is it going on dining seats? I mean, I feel like the more you can educate your client, the better, right? Because then it's not hopefully going to come back to bite you in the end.
Right. And
Um,
yeah, asking all those questions, like you said, like finding out how they're going to use it. Where is it going? Is it going to be cleaned a lot? Like everything you were saying, all the questions.
Right. And leather, I mean, in the samples, even, I'm like, the aniline leather is one of my favorites, but it does scratch and mar. So I think you can't, like, you don't want to hide that from the client, right? So, I
Right.
mean, I scratch it on the sample, like, this is part of the characteristic and what is appealing about this type of leather. But if that's not what you want, then we need to be looking, at a different leather. So I think, again, like, I try to just educate, like double rubs with fabric, right? There's fabric that is made for window treatments and pillows, and it's not made for upholstery. And
Right.
I don't take customer owned materials. Everything that my clients are getting for their pieces, they're buying from me. I have wholesale accounts. I'm marking everything up 100%. That is income and revenue without labor, which I also think everyone should be doing once you get into business, because you're only going to be able to do so much. Your body's only going to be able to tolerate so much. So you have to think about, how are ways that I can increase my revenue without the wear and tear of the upholstery. And that's through leather and higher end fabrics.
Yeah. And that's a lot of questions. Those come up. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because people ask all the time, well, do you mark up your fabric? Do you mark up your supplies? Do you sell them for retail? I'm like, absolutely. Because
Yes.
as upholsterers, that's where you make a lot of your income. Like you were saying, your labor, you could work your fingers raw or to death and just keep going, going, going. And then you're not charging enough for your supplies or your fabric, plus the shipping, plus your fuel to go pick it up, if it gets delivered somewhere else, and all of that. And at first, when I first started getting going, I was always trying to save people money. Like I was like, oh, I'll try to save your money on your upholstery because it's really expensive. But then as you go along, it's like, that's not my job. My job is to upholster their piece and to do a really good job. And it's not to save them money. They can pick a lesser quality or a lower priced fabric or a lower priced hide or leather, but it's not my job to find it for them. So
Right.
yeah, I'm glad for that. I absolutely agree. And I know there are some upholsterers who they don't mark up their fabric or their supplies. And it's just, yeah, I feel like you almost need to now with, just the way everything's been going with cost and shipping costs and fuel and whatnot. So now with marking up your supplies, do you also itemize all of your supplies? Let's say your Dacron or whatnot, or do you do like a percentage of your piece? Like, how do you go about that part of it?
I when I send a estimate to a client, it's really kind of like three categories. Labor, which in my labor estimate is like say staples, well, like the small things, right? So that's all. I don't itemize all of that down because honestly, I'm like, it feels overwhelming that a client would see every line
Yeah,
item. So I just roll that into the estimate of the upholstered piece.
I see.
If it needs new foam or if they want a down wrapped envelope, that's separate. That those are all, and you know, there's like how many different types of foam are there? And if you get a down wrapped envelope, there's like I get them from Ronco out in California. And there's, you know, you can do 1090, 2575, 50/50, goose or duck. I mean, there's just all these options, you know?
Yeah,
So I am just like, you know, I kind of give them that. Oh, sorry,
good.
my daughter. She was just here. Um, so I give them kind of like, okay, these are your options, and then I will get pricing. So and I mean, I've ordered from Ronco enough that I can kind of come up with the range. And I do like most things I do in ranges. Like when I send an estimate, it's in a range. Your labor is in a range, your yardage is in a range, your fabric, you know, I say like $50 to $150 a yard. That's the range, right? So it gives me the flexibility. Like I'm not locking anything in until they've picked the fabric and I've measured for yardage. And quite honestly, it depends on the piece, but sometimes I always kind of think worst case scenario. If it's an older piece, it's going to be the worst case scenario. The webbing's going to be falling out of it. The springs are going to need to be retied. So I just kind of assume that it's gonna, and then if it needs to go for wood restoration, that's a whole different, I can get that price from David, but that's not included in my labor.
Right.
And
So
then
that's,
fabric.
yeah. That's awesome. I really like that how you break it down. So then with the range, then you're not getting trapped
Right.
in this is what you said. And the same with worst case scenario, like you were saying with those, especially the older pieces and the antique pieces, it's almost a given. I mean, every time it's like we're gonna go all the way down to the frame, you know, on all those pieces. But then I'm sure you've noticed or come across it too, where you don't run into certain things or repairs or whatnot until you tear it down. And
Right.
then, you know, you tear it down and it's like, okay, well, you know, we weren't expecting this,
Right.
but this was covered up by all the upholstery. So when that happens, like let's say you can't put it in your worst case scenario on your estimate, do you just get a hold of them and you're like, hey, this is what happened or this is what it has, and it's going to be X amount of dollars to fix it? Like, do you give them that option or how does that work
Yes.
for you?
Yes, with pictures, right? I mean, document it with pictures to them so they can see. And that is less and less for me. Like the longer I've done it, the more you're just are like, okay. But in the beginning, I mean, some of these things I put into place. I mean, this is not how it was in the beginning for me. Like I didn't have all of this figured out, right? I mean, I made a lot of mistakes and lost a lot of money. And then you're like, okay, now I need to put this in place because, so trust me, like, I mean, and I'm still learning. I'm absolutely still learning. And I think, again, if you can have, I have a small group of upholsters. There's 5 of us, and we meet every other week on a call. And it's like an accountability group. And we kind of like the beginning of the year, we talk about our goals and what we want to do with our businesses. But we have an ongoing text feed between the 5 of us, and someone's on there almost every day. And that, so if you can find those people that you can like cry, be excited, share your wins. Like we do a rose and a thorn at every meeting, right? Like what's something good that happened to you and what's something bad. And just to not feel alone because most of us are working by ourselves. So I just think it's important to have that. But yeah, if I run into something that needs more work, or if David gets it right, and he's given me usually an idea, he either I mean we're like 5 minutes apart from each other, so he'll come over and look at it, or I'll take it over to him, and then if he gets into it and like, okay, this needs more, then I just go back. I mean, some of those things, like you can't know that until you get into it. And then I always say, like, I want to do it the right way. Like, if you want me to do it, I want to do it the right way. And I'm not going to just jerry rig it back together and cover it up with fabric. That's not who I want to be. That's not how I want to run my business. And again, I mean, my clients for the most part are like, yeah, I also want it done the right way, especially if it's a family heirloom, which is usually what I'm working on. I mean, not all the time, but a lot of times it's like, okay, if this is your family heirloom, we need to put it all back the right way. And sometimes that means someone in the process of the beginning of the piece until it got to us have really mucked it up.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to go back and redo what they like added a whole bunch of screws into the frame.
Oh my
I mean,
God. Yes.
yeah.
So will you ever tear down and you're just going, oh my gosh, like what is happening? What were they thinking? Like
Yes.
this is not-
Well, and I did
yeah.
a chair last year and I mean, literally they had put all these screws in it, and David is the one and he put them all in a Ziploc bag, and he's like, you need to show your client all these screws that I took out of this frame. So
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've been there, and it's like they're not necessary, but a lot of people don't know how to fix wood, so they're just like, oh, just put a screw in it, that's how you
yeah,
fix it. Yeah, you just screw it back together. Like, no,
right.
it's not how that works. Oh my gosh. And when David does an amazing job too. I've seen when the pieces come back from him back to you. He does such a pretty job on
Yes,
his.
yeah, and my home is also full of work that he's done. I mean, my home is I have hardly any furniture that I've bought at a furniture store. My home is full of like estate sale. I mean, our whole bedroom set came from an estate sale. I just did those little maple tables. He stained black for me and I put leather on the top. I just
Those
yeah.
were so cool. Yeah. So then the way you did it, I mean, it's just, and then you put the was it contact cement that you put on the back, or leather cement that you put on the back?
Yeah, leather weld.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that worked out so good. And it was such a nice update because I can't remember, did they have leather on them before?
They did. They did have leather on them that had like a gold like painted on, or it's like they're probably from the 70s, I would say, early 70s. They're hard rock maple. So he was like, are you sure you want them black? I love black. I mean, my dining room set is black. And I've kind of pushed him a little bit because he's traditional, right? These are maple. This is what it needs to be. And I'm like, can we do a black? And he's like, for you, I will do it, but don't tell your clients. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. He's like, no. And they were beautiful. Between the woodwork and your skills to finish them, they were really, really pretty. And then you put those in your living room. Is that where they ended up going?
Yeah, yeah, they're in the front room. So the last thing in there is there's a sofa in there that needs to be reupholstered, and I've had that fabric for probably 6 years.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's how it goes for us, right?
Like, what is it? The cobbler's children have no shoes.
Yeah.
Like, I have two wingback recliners that they're mine, and I have got to finish them. But one day, it's one of those things. You're like, okay, I'll get to it. So
Yeah.
they're not paying me. So
Right,
that's
right.
like, okay. But oh my gosh, that's so good. So we talked about you taking commission pieces and the steps you go through taking commission pieces, which I think is amazing. So I've talked about that, like the benefit in just taking commission pieces versus there's a lot of people who they don't take commission pieces. They go to shows or, you know, these vendor markets and stuff like that, and they'll make pieces to sell instead. And I think it's almost 6 to 1, half dozen to the other. And one of those things, like you said, it's like a personal preference. But the nice thing about commissions are like you don't have a whole bunch of money out on the table because that it's guaranteed almost, you know, that that customer is bringing you that job. So are there any, with your commission pieces, are there any really memorable pieces that you've worked on, whether good or bad? Like, is there a piece that you absolutely like, you loved, it was your favorite piece of all time? Or is there a piece that you worked on that you're like, I'm never doing that frame ever again? Like that is in my no list.
I've gotten to work on a lot of really great pieces. I've done the Eames style chairs. I've done a couple of those, which are super cool and a little challenging. I mean, the last one I did, the wood, so there's like a wood inside that the leather's attached to. It did some those they're kind of different, some of those chairs, but this one had like this inside wood that the leather and welt was attached to, and then it like hooked into the outside wood, and David redid the whole outside. Well, those inside pieces were all warped.
Oh, I remember
So
you. Yeah. So did you have to have new boards cut or what did
no,
you?
no, I ended up, I mean, after a lot of, I went on the Professional Upholsterers Network, and there was, I mean, 10 different suggestions. What I ended up doing was using a spray bottle and lightly misting it with water and clamps, and I used my workhorses and just sprayed and clamped, let it dry. I mean, it took a couple of days and got it back to where it was finally, you know, in the shape of the exterior wood piece. And yeah, it worked, but it took a while.
Yeah.
Um, and I did a couple of antique barber chairs several years ago in leather. Those were super fun.
That's
Um,
cool.
and they came from the client's grandfather had a barber shop in Chicago.
Oh my gosh.
So these were actually in their barber shop, and they were putting them in their house. They were going to sit and like have coffee in them in the morning, but they were really cool. And yeah, I'm trying to think of some of the other a lot of antiques. I did a antique. It was like a recliner, but it reclined with a bar in the back, and there was like hooks that went down so you could put it farther and farther back. It was really an old piece. And
That's
she actually got, the seat was leather, the back she got this goat hair on hide, but it was like carved. She got it off of Etsy, this hide, and
wow.
it had this floral. I'll find that picture and send it to
And
you.
it was like a laser cut the way,
Yes,
yeah. And it was like in a floral shape, I think.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it was so cool. I was like, what
Cool.
is that? Yeah. And it was like laser cut out the way they did it. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That was a really, really cool piece.
And that was a little challenging because that hide was just, I mean, I had no
Huh?
extra
Oh
room
my
for it. Like
gosh.
I was fudging the sides of it, and there was no making a mistake on it. I mean, I had that one hide. So the
That was it.
boxing in the back of that, the bottom, I used a black fabric for the zipper to vent that cushion because it was setting on top of the seat cushion, so you couldn't see that zipper panel.
See. Oh, that's a
And
good.
that chair was open in the back, it was slatted in the back. So you couldn't put like a decking fabric on the back of that cushion because you could see it. And so I used black fabric for the zipper panel, and that's how I vented that back cushion.
Oh, that's a great idea. And then you couldn't see it because it all
Right,
just on the back. Oh my gosh.
right.
Yeah. Well, what and the we'll have to share a picture because it was so cool. It was almost, I don't even know how you would describe that laser cutout on that piece. It was like a flower, but kind of geometric. Like it
Yeah.
was
And I
really,
have that. I'll find that Etsy shop if anyone wanted to order one of those. They're not very big. So that was the thing when we were looking at it, you know, it was like, I think it was 2 feet by 4 feet, maybe. It wasn't very big.
yeah.
So you have to like, think about the project that you're working on. And the other thing, I mean, I liked, if I'm going to do hair on hide, I don't suggest it usually for a seat. Um, I suggest it more to my clients for the back, just because over time it will lose hair.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's, I mean, it's, I know Carly does a lot of like, you know, hair on hide cushions. So, I mean, it is, it, there's nothing wrong with it. It just over time, it's not going to hold up as long as what a leather would hold up on a seat.
Right. And I run into the same thing, or I'll have customers come to me and they'll have one that's hair on hide on the seat or the arms, you know, like let's say it's a wingback or whatnot. And they molt. It's just like a purse, you know, if you have a
Yeah.
hair on hide purse and anywhere it rubs, it's like, and then you have this bald spot. But
Right.
yeah, I totally agree. But that hide was super cool. It was just, it was so different. I'd never seen anything like it before. And I was like, that's really neat.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
client found it, and she was a repeat client. So like I said, I don't normally take that.
Yeah.
But here's the thing for me, like if it's a cool enough idea and you're gonna come to me and bring the school chair and find that hide, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that.
I totally agree. And like there's some clients that they'll bring these ideas that I wouldn't normally, same deal, agree to. And it's like, oh, that turned out really cool. Like I would have never done that before or for myself or anything. But their idea, the way it came to fruition, I was like, okay, that turned out pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah. So oh, so I was gonna ask you about your workspace before we go on to your workshops. Is there a method that you have for your project? So you mentioned that you have multiple pieces going at the same time. Do you have like so many pieces in tear down and then so many pieces in rebuild? Like how do you organize it so you're not just like running all over the place?
Yeah, that would be great if I had a great system in
That's
place.
how I feel.
My brain kind of bounces around in my head, and that's absolutely how I work.
That's the same.
Yeah, I do. I have a friend, and she is now doing her own upholstery, but there's three of us that kind of work together. And she was coming over like 2 days a week. She stopped doing that last year because now she's busy. So I did on the days that she would come over, I absolutely had a plan before she got here because I was like, okay, I need to not just be as scattered as I am usually. She kept me really on track. I miss that she's not over here twice a week.
Oh,
I work, so I'm in my basement. This where I'm sitting right now is where all my sewing machines, well, all but one sewing machine are in this space. And this space is about 12 by 12. This was originally was going to be my workspace. I've since taken over the entire basement. Uh,
that's
yeah. So the spare bedroom is full of stuff. I have students coming tomorrow, so now the spare bedroom is really full of stuff because I've just shoved stuff in there. So I have our pool table. I actually have converted into our work table. So I have three MDF boards big. So my work table is 65 by 108. So there's three MDF boards that sit on top of the pool table, and then I put like a mat on top of that and then a canvas over it, mainly because I mean, my kids are in their 20s, so if they all come home and want to, you know, play pool, we can literally take that all apart, put it underneath the pool table and use it as a pool table, but 90% of the time it's my work table.
amazing. That's
And
such a good idea.
yeah, and then I use my third car garage for tear down because I don't really want to bring, I mean, if it's a dining seats or something like that, I will bring it in, but typically I do tear down out in the garage because stuff is dirty and I don't want it in my house. So, I mean, it kind of is like every week looks a little different for me. It depends on what projects I'm working on and if I tear it down and take it to David. Um, so I don't have I mean, I have systems, otherwise I wouldn't get anything done, right? But I'm not like this diehard. I mean, I'm pretty ADHD, so I feel like I work the way my brain is. I wish it was more organized. That being said, it feels like I get quite a bit done every day. So
I mean, if it works, I mean, that's how I feel. I'm all over the place. Like there are systems. I know there are systems, but I'm not quite sure how they work out.
yeah.
So, yeah. I totally get it. Well, and you know, like you said with the different projects, it's different every week, it's different all the time. You have different pieces in different stages. Like it's not it's hard to have structure if you have these different pieces, or you're sending pieces out to David and then they're coming back, and it's like you kind of have to be flexible and just kind of go with it and just work with what's in your shop or your workspace at that time. And yeah, I totally
And I
understand.
think that's the for me, that is the fun part of what we do, is it is different and pieces are different. And I will tell you that if I have like 8 chairs, 8 Parsons chairs that are all the same, I am really over them by the time they're gone.
Yeah.
I'm like,
That-
I am good with
that's
one piece. I mean, I'll do it. And especially, I mean, we did 8 Parsons chairs with a pattern match, and you had to make sure that that one little dot was landing on the, I mean, and it was just like, they looked beautiful, but I was really done with those chairs by the time they left.
yeah. You're
So
just
I think the joy of it is that we are doing different things every week and every day.
I agree. Well, and it keeps it interesting. And I know there are some upholsterers, like they just love that the repeat pieces, and you know, they have like 30 chairs for a restaurant and they
Right.
just love it. They just go along with it. I'm absolutely the same as you. Like if I work on multiple of the same pieces, by the time those pieces leave, I am so thankful. Like I'm just bored to death and done with it. So yes. So now let's go into we're going over time here and I apologize, but I really want to talk about your workshops, because your workshops are awesome. And I know there are so many people around your area who you know, they want to get into upholstery, and they just want to learn in general, whether it's for business they might have starting up, or just for themselves, like maybe it's just their dining room chair seats. So how did
Yes.
you get into teaching and doing workshops, and like what took you down that avenue versus just working on customer and commission pieces?
Yeah. I started workshops 3 years ago, and they're small. I mean, it's a max of 4 because my space is limited, you know. Um, but I love sharing. I mean, I feel like on in the on the Facebook groups and on social media, and I have a lot of people that reach out with questions, and I answer everyone's questions. And so I have several close friends that are like, I mean, 5 years ago, you should be teaching. You should be teaching. And I was like, I don't know, I'm busy. And I taught, I mean, I'm not a teacher, but when my kids were in 4-H, I was the sewing leader and the photography leader. And, you know, so it's like I do love sharing and I love learning and I love passing that on to people. So I was like, okay, I'll just kind of put it out there and see, you know, how it goes. Um, and so do like different workshops. I'm doing a 3-day workshop this weekend, which is there's 3 students coming and they're all bringing different pieces. I have a leather workshop in August or in April, which is a Parson style chair. So the students are all, you know, working on the same style chair because it's a little easier when you're doing leather. And actually, right now, I only have 1 student signed up for that. She's coming from Portland. So there are still 3 spots for that. And we will go through basically everything that I taught at Custom Workroom Conference last year. So that workshop is all about leather, like how to order it and how to work with it and how to cut it and how to put it on the frame and how to vent it and all of those things. Um, and then I'm doing a lampshade workshop actually in my neighborhood at our community center, also in April. So that's a 1-day workshop, which will be fun.
Fun.
And then I have another 3-day workshop. I can't remember exactly the schedule. I think it's in June. There's another 3-day workshop. And the 3-day workshops basically are like students send me pictures so I can say again, like so they're not like, I want to bring this wingback chair and I've never done upholstery.
Yeah. You're like, let me approve it first.
Yeah, let me see what it
Yeah.
is. And also that it's something that realistically we can get finished or almost all the way finished in those 3 days, because I think it's not nice to leave with it half finished. They may not have, and I mean, when they come here, they're bringing their piece and their fabric. And I mean, I have all the tools, right? So it's not like they have to haul an air compressor or the staple guns. Like, they're using all of my stuff, which I think is nice to be able to come and use it and try it. And then if you want to, like, okay, yeah, I want to buy those things, I can share where, where I've gotten a lot of my stuff. But it's a lot to invest in if you don't even know if you want to do it, or if you just want to do your own dining room seats. You know what I mean? You don't want to buy an air compressor and staple gun and all that.
No,
Um,
I agree. And it does, like you said, it makes it nice for them because sometimes it's overwhelming too. Like they don't know what to get, or they
right.
don't even like Dacron. They're like, what? What do I need to, so it's so much easier. I totally agree with you. It's like, okay, I have the tools,
I have, yeah,
and then yeah, you can use them. And then if you want to buy tools, or like you said, if they just want to do their dining room chair seats and they don't want to buy tools, why invest all that money into
right.
all those? And yeah, I think that's
And then I
awesome.
have all the supplies here too. So like, yeah, the Dacron or the, I mean, spray glue or whatever. Um, and usually we just kind of keep track, like, okay, just keep track of it and we settle up at the end, but I'm like, you can't, I mean, it's hard to know where to even buy those supplies, right? But I have a wholesale supplier, so I have all of that stuff here. So I'm like, don't worry about all of that. Just come, because I feel like that's a hurdle sometimes to, like, well, I want to take this workshop, but where do I get all of the supplies? And I don't, you know what I mean? So like, just bring your piece and your fabric and come, and then we'll like work through all of the rest of it. I'm going to Workroom Tech in July to teach a leather tufting class. So that's deep button tufting and biscuit tufting. And then just, so there's three, well, we're doing 3 boards. Um, and I have that on my website, and it's linked through Workroom Tech. I taught there last year at Workroom Tech. That's in Tryon, North Carolina. Amazing workspace
Nice.
um, to teach in. And then I have classes in September. I have a student coming from Canada,
That's
and
awesome.
yeah, so and there's still spots in that workshop too. So yeah, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has. Um, And I try to just be flexible. Like, we always go out to dinner one night during the workshop, like make it fun. And yeah, and then I just organized, or in the process of organizing, a meetup in Denver in August.
Yeah,
So
so talk about that. You'd mentioned that. That's very cool. Gosh, that'll be
yeah,
fun. Yeah.
yeah, so I've reached out to 3 businesses, and I have gotten the approval from all 3 of them. One is an upholstery supplier, one is an industrial sewing machine shop, and the other one is they do like pillow inserts and the cushions, envelopes and stuff. So we're going to be, I mean, that's as far as I've gotten an approval from all 3 of them that yes, we can come. And so I am going to do a newsletter just with all the information, but it's not, I mean, people can come from wherever, I feel like we are fortunate in Denver to have a lot to offer, especially the industrial sewing machine shop. Um, which it's like a kid in a candy store when you go there, if you get to go in the back, which I have because I've bought machines from them. And I mean, the sewing machines back there, you're just like, oh my gosh, like,
But yeah, like there's so much to look at. Oh, how fun. So you're gonna go to each business. Is it one business per day or how?
so my plan is that we're going to do the sewing machine shop and the supplier on a Thursday with lunch in between, and then on Friday we'll go out to American Down and Feather. And then I'm also, well, my sister does my website and my newsletters and stuff. So I'm gonna put in there, like there's the Denver Design Center. So other things that I'm not gonna be coordinating, but like if you're coming from out of town, here's some other things that you might want to do while you're here. So
Very cool.
I just, like I said, local people have been asking me, like, you need to do this. And I'm like, okay, so yesterday I made the phone calls to the 3 businesses and they all said yes. And I was like, okay, here we go. So, I tentatively have it on the calendar, and my sister added to my like the newsletter sign up where you can check that box because I'm trying to still kind of figure out like how I'm gonna like gather all the names so I know how many people are coming and to be able to get information to everyone so they know what the plan is. So it's still kind of a work in progress, but there's so many things, and I'm sure you feel this in California. There's so many things on the East Coast and
Yeah.
in North Carolina, and I'm like, we can also do things
Yeah.
here,
Like, what
you
about
know?
us? Yeah. What about here?
Yeah.
We're-
Yeah. So I'm like, sometimes it just takes someone to say, like, yeah, I'll help figure that out. So yeah, I think it'll be fun.
That's going to be a lot of fun. Oh my gosh. I wish I could come. That sounds amazing. So I hope you're going to share all of your, when you go and you guys are all together. Cause oh my gosh, that sounds like a great time.
Yeah.
So, so you have all your workshops, those are all on your website. And then you have workroom conference. So you're teaching at workroom conference. You said it was in July.
I'm teaching at Workroom Tech, which Susan
Workroom
owns
Tech, that's what it
Workroom
is.
Tech
Oh,
and Workroom Conference.
okay.
Custom Workroom Conference. So that all of that hasn't, the Custom Workroom Conference is in September in Rhode Island. And those announcements haven't been made yet. So, but Workroom Tech I'm going to in July. The Custom Workroom Conference, if anyone like follow her on social media, it's for window treatments and upholsters. It's a long ways away from us, right? It's in New Hampshire.
That's a
Uh,
trip.
or Rhode Island, Rhode Island. I keep saying New Hampshire. It's in Providence, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just it's a 3-day conference, and I mean, just to be around like-minded people, it's like I can't even explain. And there's other conferences, but this one is specifically for custom workrooms. So, if you have a chance to do it, and actually, I am planning to go, and I think my husband's going to come at the end of it, and then we're going to do a little mini vacation because I've never been in that part of the country before. So,
Same. We talked about the same. I was like, okay, I've never been over there before. So can we make it like a trip? Like we'll
yeah,
go. It'll be
and
like a
that's
work
what we're
trip. Yeah. Yeah. Work trip and then fun. So
yeah.
yeah. I
And
have
it's
got
just great. I mean, just the collaboration with everyone. And, I mean, it's great to, be connected through social media. It just elevates your relationship when you actually are together for 3 days, hanging out, going to classes together, having dinner together. It's just such a wonderful thing. So,
I agree. Well, and it's almost like a mastermind, like what you were saying with your weekly meetup. Like you have these people who are all like-minded, you're all kind of going the same direction, and they might think about something that you hadn't thought of, or vice versa. And it's almost like you lift each other up quicker and go a certain direction quicker. So yeah, I totally agree. So with your workshops and everything you have going on, if you have students who want to come to your workshops, and like you said, they just bring their piece and their fabric, which I think is absolutely fabulous, because I totally agree. I do the same thing. I just do like a work order for them. So they just keep track of what they use, and then we check out at the end. But is there anything, if somebody's interested in doing one of your workshops, is there anything like you tell them up front, like, hey, this is what you need to prepare, or is it just bring your piece and your project and let's go?
Yeah, I kind of email back and forth, like send me pictures of your piece, and then we kind of talk about it. And I'm like, have it torn down before you come, save everything you've torn off, take lots of pictures. So I kind of give that, as we're emailing back and forth. Or I mean, sometimes I'll set up a call, just whatever people feel comfortable with. I mean, I could set up a FaceTime too or something, so if they wanted to show it to me, like the girl that's coming for the leather workshop. She's in Portland. So she's like, okay, I do want to come, but I just like, I need to talk through some of this. I'm like, absolutely, let's set up a call. Um, and then yeah, we're, just we start, tomorrow morning we're starting, and we just kind of introduce ourselves and then just dive into, our pieces and walk through the plan for each one of them. And with 3 to 4 students, I mean, it feels like it's manageable for me to get to everyone. I think the nice thing about having workshops like that is you're learning from other people's pieces, right? So it's like, okay, your piece, but I may stop everyone and say, okay, everyone come over and look at this because this is a little bit different. Um, and yeah, I think just, I mean, I want students to leave excited to do their next piece and not like, oh my gosh, I never want to do upholstery again. And I think that's why it's important to have something that they feel like they can, like I said, get finished, or at least get close to finished, and they can finish just the last little bit at home if they need to, and be excited to do their next piece. Because it's like, it's not my goal to like squelch the want for them to do a
No.
post out of them.
Well, and like it's that confidence. Like you want to give them that confidence to take on a harder piece maybe the next time. And I totally agree. Like we were saying earlier, if they take on a hard piece and then it's like it squashes their confidence and they're struggling the whole time. And it's just not nearly as fun as if it's like, okay, we're doing this. This is a lot of fun. So, okay, speaking of your workshops, have you had any injuries, any serious injuries? I know one of the gals, I think it was Lindsay, was talking about how she had shot herself with a staple gun. And thankfully, I have not had that happen in my workshops. But have you ever had anything crazy or serious? I feel like we bleed all the time.
Um, Knock on wood. I mean, I have students coming tomorrow. I have not, I mean, my foam saw, which, or it was a console foam saw, got dropped and broke. And that was like, they're super expensive. But
Yeah.
I haven't had any, I mean, I have good insurance, but I haven't, and hopefully
Good.
it doesn't happen. I mean, because I would feel awful. I mean, it's like we are talking about like, make sure you have safety glasses on, because staples sometimes, like, even if you just pick a gun up, they can shoot.
Oh,
I've never actually, and I'll probably do it tomorrow. I've never stapled myself, believe it or not. And yeah, I have friends that are like, you're not even an upholsterer if you have.
you haven't stapled
I'm
yourself.
like, I am always very aware of where my digits are, and I try to make sure they're out of the way before I pull the trigger.
Well,
So,
there you go. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I totally get that. Well, and then I mean, there's so many things you can injure yourself with, between your tear down tools and then oh yeah. I had a gal one workshop. I can't remember what she was doing. I think she was trying to pull staples. And I said, well, here's a tool. And I can't remember what tool I gave her, but she goes, it's okay. I used the scissors to pull the to pull the staple out. And I was like, oh,
oh,
okay, well.
I don't recommend that, but okay.
Yeah, I was like, well, okay. So workshops are a lot of fun. I think it's absolutely amazing that you're doing what you're doing, especially with leather. Like you said, there is nobody out there teaching leather really, or showing you how to do leather or upholstery with leather, because it's totally different than fabric in some ways. So now where can people find you? So we'll wrap this up. So I kept you way over, but
Yeah, that's okay.
as far as workshops goes and where people can find you, if they want to learn from you or have you upholster a piece for them and whatnot, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So the Whimsical Chair is the name of my business. The whimsicalchair.com is my website. And then I'm on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest, not as much. I don't have a Twitter account. I had one and I closed it out. It feels like it's enough to manage just Facebook and Instagram. Um, but my website is where all the workshops are. So, I mean, I have a lot of stuff on my website. I have my resource page, which I've listed, like, and I need to go in and update it and add yours. Like people that I follow, online classes, just to help people find things, it's like these are the sources that I use. And then I did that Amazon storefront last year just to make it easier. Like I said, I would like show the rotary cutter and everyone's like, oh, where did you get that? And so I just kind of created that storefront just to, I mean, I get a little bit of a kickback, but like I think $60 last year. So it's not like it's, but
Like a yeah.
yeah, but just to make it easy to share, like, okay, the links are all there, right? And I kind of split it up into categories. And I even have lampshade stuff on there. I have books like upholstery books, leather books, lampshade books that I like. I have a fairly extensive library of all of my crafts that I love. So yeah, so that's where I am. And I mean, I try to, if people reach out with questions, I'm quickest probably on social media, you know, if it pops up. Email is the whimsical chair at gmail.com. And so yeah, however, you know, however anyone wants to, if they have any questions or wants to know more, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, I absolutely love that with your resources page. I need to put that on there because there are so many people in your area who are constantly asking me, and I'm just sending them your page. So I'm like, just get a hold of her. Like she's, but the resources page is amazing. That is a great idea to just have everything in one spot, and then you can find whoever it is you're looking for close to you.
Yeah.
So is there anything you want to mention that I might have missed? I know we covered quite a few topics and we went way over time, but I absolutely love having you on here. So I was like, we'll just keep going with this.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you and I love everything you're doing and supporting you. And I wish we were closer. I mean, I was in San Diego, right?
Oh
But
no.
yeah, I mean, it'd be great to hang out with you in person. I'm sure we would just have great conversations. And yeah, I think what you're doing is amazing. And I know everyone that's in your group is loving all the instruction that they're getting. And I mean, I love seeing Cody's stuff now too, right? And that's so
Yes.
fun. Is like, what?
Yeah, he's slowly trickling in. You know, I'm an introvert and he's like extreme introvert, but he's realizing it's not quite as scary. You know, it's not that bad, but we've been having a lot of fun with it, especially that Art of the Cowgirl piece that he did. It worked out really good. But thank you. It's been a lot of fun following you too. And gosh, your pieces, they're absolutely amazing. And I
Um,
really think, like you said, us all lifting each other up and teaching the skills, I feel like sharing doesn't ever go wrong. And I know some people are like, you know, I shared and she took my project or stole from me as far as like design or whatnot. But I feel like it all comes back around. Like I feel like us sharing our skill and sharing what we do, like I really feel like it does so much good. And there's so many people out there who want to learn and they just have no idea where to start. I mean, I know I was there. I don't know about you, but when I started, it was like, okay, like we're just gonna practice tying springs today out of a book. And
yeah.
so, you
Yeah.
know,
I mean, I think, yeah, I absolutely agree. And I'm like, I feel like we're all better together. And there are going to be people out there like that. I'm like, they're not in my circle for very long because I'm like, it's not who I am. It's not who I want to be. And I mean, I'm doing this because I have a passion for it, not because I'm like out to get anyone else or steal anyone else, you know, like there's I mean, this is what I say, and especially in my area, and I'm sure it's everywhere, there is more work out there than there are upholsters. So we should all be supporting and helping each other. And that may mean that someone is, I mean, what I do is I just befriend them, right? I'm like, oh, you're my neighbor. Let's be friends so we can like do this together. Now I would say that women are better at that than men, right? Men are not always so open to that, but yeah, I can't fix that. So
yeah, no, and I totally agree. I feel like the more the merrier, you know, and I'll have people ask me, oh my gosh, well, there's this girl who started upholstering and she's, 20 miles down the road from me. I'm like, awesome, what's her name? Like,
yes,
can we,
yeah.
yeah, can we
Yeah,
be friends?
one last note. I did this new chair new year challenge in January. There was 7 of us upholsters, and I did it last year too. And there the girls, Lindsay from Madam of Making is who kind of coordinated all of it. And she reached out last year and I was like, she's like, do you want to do this? I'm like, yeah. I told my husband, I go, I'm like the grandma of the group, but I mean, I can hang with the cool kids, right? And
Whatever.
we did it again this year and it was just so fun. It's like every day one of us shared kind of our, what we worked on. And then we gave different things away. So the thing that I gave away was two of the Spruce upholstery books. It's one of my favorite books. And
Yes.
so yeah, so I reached out. So there was two people that won. The one guy that won, Kevin Kais, is actually a friend of mine. And so I was like, okay, you won the book.
Yeah.
And the other girl, her name is Grit. And I mean, I didn't know who she was. So I reached out to her and I said, hey, you won this book. Can I get your address so I can ship it to you? And she said, I have a strange request. I live in Castle Rock. Can
Yeah.
I come meet you? And I was like, yeah. And I said, let me order the book and I'll let you know when it's here. She lives 4 minutes away from me.
Oh my gosh.
She's young. She has a baby that's getting ready to turn 1. They moved here a year ago. And she said, I told my husband I wanted to reach out to you. And he said it was creepy. And I was like, it's not creepy at all. So I'm going to go have lunch with her next week.
Oh,
And I
how fun.
just think you don't know if you shut those doors, right? It's like, yeah, I mean, I could use help. She's like, I would love to come help you. So who knows where it's going to go, but I just think, like if you're closed off to those types of things, then you just stay by yourself in your workroom. Like you have to be open to, connecting and supporting and not be afraid that they're going to steal from you. Instead, it may enhance what you're already doing.
Right. I totally agree. And it's those opportunities too. Like you just don't know what it'll turn into. Like, well, like meeting that gal, like you don't know what it's going to turn into. But if you say no, then it won't turn into anything. But
Right.
yeah, I totally agree. And it's just, I mean, it's like with anything. But I feel like just like what you said, there's absolutely enough for everybody. And there's more than enough work to go around, especially with upholstery. And it's not, we're not lacking in the area of trying to find customers. It's like people will hear about you and gosh, I wish there was more people I could send people to, like customers to, because sometimes it's overwhelming. So I absolutely agree. Like the more the merrier. If you want to learn, absolutely. Especially for me in the Western upholstery world, the Western design, there's not a lot of people that do it. So that was one of the reasons I was like, hey, you guys want to learn? Absolutely. Like it's not, it's still a lot of the same skills, but working with leathers and hides and things like that, it's a little different on that end, but I absolutely agree with you. The more the merrier.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, is there anything else that we might have missed? I kept you way over. I'm sorry.
I
Just
don't know, but just thank you so much for setting this up. It was great to talk to you. And if anyone has any questions, just like I said, reach out. I'm happy to help in any way I can.
well, you are absolutely a joy. I am so glad to have you here, Rhonda. And I'm just, your skill, I'm just alone. I'm like, I can't, I get all like tongue tied. I'm like, it's so good. So, but I'm just in awe of everything you do, your business, the way you run your business, your pieces, your social media alone. Everybody should just go follow you just to watch what you do as far as on social media. Your reels, like, they're just all so good. How you walk everybody through the process. It's amazing. It's what you've done, especially watching you just for the last few years. I have no words.
Thank
So,
you.
but you are absolutely a joy to have in the upholstery world. And I really thank you for coming and hanging out with me today and talking to everybody. So yeah, if everybody wants to go find you on your social media, so it's the Whimsical Chair, and then you also have your website. So you're on Instagram, Facebook, you have your website. Can they also follow you on Pinterest? That's a thing too? You said you were
I
on.
mean, I'm not great on Pinterest. I have it set up, but I'm not super good on it. Feel like Pinterest is like better for people that like have Etsy shops and stuff, but um I do have it set up. So I mean, I do think you can follow me, but Instagram is probably where I'm most active. But I'm active on Facebook too. So yeah, I would say those two are probably and Reels I mean, I have kids in their 20s, right? So I mean, my daughter's the one that taught me when Reels first started, I was like, how do I even do this? And I have fun with it. I mean, when I stop having fun with it, you'll know because I won't be, but right now I'm still having fun with it. So
You do a great job with them, and they're so creative all the way around. So I really want to thank you for coming on today, and I hope everybody goes to follow you. I'll go ahead and post the link, and then yeah, we'll have this recording, and that way hopefully they can come take some classes with you, if nothing else, if they're nearby. So
yeah, that'd be awesome. Well, thank you again so much. I really appreciate this time, like to hang out with your group. And yeah, I mean, we talk, right? We chat, you and I, so that won't stop either. So, but yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions.
perfect. Well, thank you, Rhonda. I really appreciate your time, and then yeah, go follow her, you guys. So all right, well, I'll let you get out of here, Rhonda, and I kept you way over, but this was a lot of fun. So
Thank you. We'll see you later.
okay, bye.